Welcome back to the West Virginia Media Lab podcast.
Good to be here.
So you sent over this really fascinating report from the West Virginia Media Lab archives. It's about something kind of strange that happened back in January '64, right? Mason County.
That's the one. Yeah, it describes this incident involving a farmer, Donnie McGraw, near Gallipolis Ferry. It was apparently after a heavy snowfall. Really cold.
And he finds something unusual.
Extremely unusual. The report details how he found his cows had busted through a fence, there was damage to his barn, and, well, these enormous strange tracks all over his field in the snow.
Okay, so right away, that sounds like more than just, some stray animal wandering through.
Definitely. It's a real head-scratcher from the get-go.
All right, so let's get into what McGraw actually reported seeing or finding. He said it was late, right? Like 2 a.m.
Yeah, around 2 in the morning. He hears his cattle, 18 Angus, the report says, just making a racket.
So he goes out to check.
Exactly. And finds 4 of them had actually broken right through a fence. A pretty solid one, too, apparently.
Yeah.
And 1 cow was just missing.
Missing, just vanished.
Gone. And the barn wasn't much better. Doors broken, hanging off the hinges. And there was this, big hole smashed through the back wall.
Wow, okay. That's some serious damage. But then the tracks, that seems to be the core of it.
Absolutely. The tracks.
Yeah.
He described them starting near the woods, going deep into the snow, suggesting something, heavy.
How big were they?
About 17 inches long, according to McGraw. And he was clear there were 5 distinct toes. But interestingly, no claw marks.
17 inches, that's huge. And 5 toes like a human, but not.
Sort of. And the stride length was apparently around 6 feet between each step. That points to something walking upright and something large. He apparently said it looked like someone dropped a cinder block, heel first, into the snow. A kind of deep impression.
Okay, so you've got this scene. Damaged barn, panicked cows, a missing one, and these giant weird tracks. Not your average Tuesday morning.
Not at all.
Yes.
It's no wonder the authorities got involved pretty quickly.
Right. The sheriff's deputies came out the next day.
They did. They arrived, documented everything, took photos, measured the prints carefully.
Did they follow them?
They did, yeah. Followed the trackway for about half a mile, deeper into the woods.
Did they find anything? The missing cow?
That's the strange part. The tracks just stopped abruptly. No sign of what made them, no sign of the cow.
Just stopped, vanished.
Pretty much. And they found nothing else. No blood, no hair, no fur, no droppings. Nothing you'd expect from an animal.
That just adds another layer of weirdness, doesn't it?
It really does.
And it wasn't just the deputies. A scientist got involved, too. Dr. Keller.
Dr. Raymond Keller, yeah. A wildlife biologist. He examined the tracks as well.
Now, that's interesting. Having a scientist look at it adds some, credibility or at least a different perspective. What would he have been looking for specifically?
Well, someone with his background would be analyzing the morphology, the shape, the number of toes, claw marks, or lack thereof. He'd look at the stride, the gait pattern suggested by the spacing, the depth for weight estimation, basically comparing it against every known animal in West Virginia.
Trying to match it to something familiar. A bear. A deformed animal, anything.
Exactly. He's looking for characteristics of known local wildlife.
So, what was his conclusion? The Point Pleasant Register reported on it, right?
Yes. And according to their report, Dr. Keller stated pretty clearly that the stride length and the foot shape didn't match any known native animal.
Not even a bear. People always think bear.
He specifically ruled out bears, pointed to the 5 distinct toes, the shape, and the complete lack of claw marks. Bear tracks look different and always have claw marks.
Okay.
And he also said they were way too big and the stride too even to be human footprints.
So a trained biologist says, I don't know what this is, but it's not from around here.
Essentially, yes. And it's key, as the report notes, that he was a field scientist, not someone looking for monsters, just analyzing the evidence.
Right. So we've got the farmer's account, the physical damage, the deputy's report, the strange tracks, and a scientist stumped. That's quite a foundation.
It is. And what makes it even more intriguing is that this apparently wasn't an isolated weird event in Mason County that year.
Oh, there was other stuff going on.
Seems so. The Media Lab report connects this to some other strange occurrences in 1964, like in the spring over at the McClintock Wildlife Station.
What happened there?
3 boys were fishing, and they reported seeing this creature. Tall, maybe 7 feet or more, dark-haired. It apparently came out of the woods, looked right at them, and then just turned around and went back into the trees.
7 feet tall, dark hair. Did they, Describe it in more detail.
The report doesn't give a ton more detail, unfortunately, just the height, the dark hair, and the fact that it emerged and retreated.
Mhm.
But, 3 kids seeing the same unsettling thing,
Yeah.
that's noteworthy.
Yeah, definitely. And wasn't there something else later that year with
Yeah. That's
loggers?
right. In August, near a place called Leetart, 2 loggers found large, very human-like footprints in some mud while working up in the hills.
Similar prints again?
Similar in that they were large and human-like. And one of the loggers mentioned something else, a really strong, bad smell just before they found the prints.
A smell? What kind?
He described it as, like rotten eggs mixed with wet dog. Really unpleasant.
Huh. That smell detail pops up sometimes in these kinds of stories, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's an interesting sensory detail to include. The report doesn't specify the exact size or number of prints the loggers found, just that they were large, human-like, and struck these experienced woodsmen as unusual.
So multiple incidents. Different people, different locations, same year, same county, no obvious connection between them.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, is it all just coincidence? Or was something genuinely odd happening around Mason County in '64?
Which leads to trying to explain the tracks themselves. The obvious explanation people jump to is, well, maybe it was a hoax, a prank.
Right. Someone faked the tracks.
But how likely is that, really? Especially considering the conditions.
Well, think about it. Making multiple identical 17-inch prints with 5 toes deep in frozen ground. That's not easy. You'd need some kind of heavy, sophisticated stamp, maybe.
And you'd have to carry it through the snow, press it down hard enough each time, maintain a 6-foot stride.
While also somehow breaking barn doors and smashing a hole in the wall. And making off with a cow, it seems like a lot of effort and damage for a simple prank.
Yeah, and usually pranksters talk. Someone eventually brags or confesses, right?
Almost always. But 60 years later, nothing. Silence. That really makes the prank theory seem, well, less plausible.
Okay, so if not a prank, what about a known animal? We touched on bears.
Yeah, and we kind of ruled that out based on Dr. Keller's assessment and just basic bear anatomy and behavior. They don't walk upright like that for long distances, and the tracks were wrong. No claws, different shape.
Right, so known animals don't seem to fit. Prank seems unlikely. Where does that point?
Well, this is where you get into the territory of the unknown. Maybe cryptids? The report mentions this connection, bringing in Bigfoot or similar legendary creatures.
And West Virginia does have a lot of that kind of folklore, doesn't it? Stories going way back.
Oh, absolutely. Long before 1964, you've got Cherokee legends of the Solokolu, this tall, strong, sometimes smelly creature of the mountains.
Smelly like the logger reported.
Potentially, yeah. And early settlers had their own tales, calling a similar being a wood booger. These stories of wild men or hairy beasts in the deep woods are part of the state's cultural fabric.
So these older stories kind of provide a context, maybe? People were already imagining something like this living out there.
It's possible. It frames how people might interpret something unexplained like the McGraw tracks. And then, interestingly, the report links this 1964 event to what happened later in Point Pleasant.
Mothman.
Mothman, yeah. The main sighting started in 1966. Some researchers think these earlier events, like the tracks and the sighting at McClintock, were maybe the first signs of the weirdness that culminated in the Mothman phenomena.
Like a precursor. Setting the stage.
Could be. Almost like these were the initial ripples drawing attention to Mason County as a place where strange things happen. There's even some loose talk connecting it to other high strangeness reported around then, UFOs, men in black type encounters, though that's more speculative.
It feels like a concentration of weirdness in one area over a few years.
It certainly seems that way from the reports.
Now, going back to the tracks, the deputies took photos. Actual physical evidence. What happened to those?
That's one of those frustrating parts of this whole thing. The report says at least 4 photos were definitely taken. They were even printed in the local paper, the Point Pleasant Register, so the community saw them, and copies were supposedly sent to the state police in Charleston.
Okay, so they existed. Where are they now?
Gone, apparently. The newspaper archives seem to be missing that specific edition or the photos from it. And the state police, they reportedly have no record of ever receiving them or having them on file.
That's convenient. Or just poor record keeping.
Hard to say. Could be either, or something else entirely. It's a dead end for that physical proof.
But wasn't there someone later who confirmed seeing them? A deputy?
Yes. That's a crucial piece. In 1997, a retired deputy who said he was actually there on the scene back in '64 gave an interview. He confirmed the photos were real and talked about how huge the tracks were.
What did he say exactly?
The quote mentioned in the report is something like he'd never seen anything like it before or since in his entire career. Coming from a law enforcement officer years later, that adds significant weight.
So the photos are gone, but we have credible testimony that they existed and showed something extraordinary.
Exactly. It keeps the mystery alive, even without the pictures themselves.
It really makes you think about how we deal with things that don't fit, doesn't it? Maybe sometimes it's easier to let things fade away if there's no easy explanation.
I think there's a tendency towards that. We like neat boxes for everything, but the facts here are stubborn. Damaged barn, missing cow, tracks documented by police, photos taken, a scientist unable to identify them.
And importantly, like you said, no hoax confession after all this time. That's unusual for something this dramatic.
Very unusual. It leaves us hanging, really.
So wrapping this up, we're left with these big questions, aren't we? What was it that left those tracks? Could it really have been some undiscovered creature, a Bigfoot-type being?
Or is there some other explanation we're missing entirely?
And how does it fit, if at all, with the other weirdness in Mason County in the 60s? Was it all connected somehow?
And maybe the biggest question, could something like that happen again out there in the woods?
Gives you pause. The hills have long memories, as they say.
They certainly do. And sometimes, it seems, they show us things we weren't expecting, things that stretch our understanding.
Well, thanks for walking us through this fascinating and, frankly, pretty weird story from the Media Lab report. It's a lot to chew on.
Definitely a compelling case study in the unexplained.
We hope everyone listening will think about the evidence, the accounts, and, come to their own conclusions about that winter night 60 years ago.
And maybe a final thought to leave with. When you have multiple strange reports clustering like this, and questions that linger for decades, what does that suggest about the edges of what we know? About the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of it all?
Something to definitely keep in mind. Thanks again for tuning into the West Virginia Media Lab podcast.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. The West Virginia Media Lab is all about celebrating our state and its people, businesses, stories, news, and folklore. If you love West Virginia like we do, be sure to comment below, then subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Until next time, stay wild, wonderful, West Virginia.